obviously on a tiny URL. You can connect your account to your own website or your blog, and that will stream your tweets and tweets related to anything that you think about directly there. Your account runs because you have a number of followers or you follow people, and you have a button underneath, unfortunately, picture of it. You have a button underneath your anybody that comes up that you click that says follow, and you then into your real-time timeline, which is a stream of your tweets. You find out what they're writing about, and you can follow as many people as you want, or as few people as you want, in whatever sector, whatever area. You don't need to know them. Most of the people I follow I don't know. And you can subscribe or unsubscribe to their tweets with a click of a button. Unlike Facebook, you don't actually need to have a reciprocal relationship with those people. So nobody has to click, yes, I do want to be friends with this person. They just follow you. If they're spam, if they're commenting, trolling you, or just generally being horrible, you can block them, mark them as spam, and they'll never have anything to do with your tweets again. These all appear in real time, which I go back and that's your timeline. There's a number of conventions that exist in Twitter to ease sharing, updating, and searching for information. So tweets are, if you're sending a tweet to somebody, they're addressed with the @user syntax. So you can see there my rather sarcastic tweet to English Heritage. The @user messages, although these are directed to a specific account, they will appear in your timeline. So anybody that's following you will be able to see what you're commenting on it to other people. So lots of people saw that, which didn't embarrass them into employing any more outreach, which is unfortunate. Information and profiles. So you can set up a Twitter profile, and this is really, really basic. It's completely different to a Facebook profile, which you can write about your favourite songs, music, whatever. Twitter asks you to provide 160, I think is the limit, short brief, who you are, what you do, a username, a website if you've got one to link to, and that's it basically. It's very, very short, very brief. It's not about who you are, really. It's not about who you are in real life and what your likes and dislikes are. It's about now, it's about the immediacy of your tweet. It's the immediacy of your information rather than a big backstory about where you're from, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Last April, some research was done by a company called websitemonitoring.com, and they showed that 24% of everybody that is on Twitter has no followers whatsoever. So they're tweeting to nobody, which is very sad. And 97% of everybody on Twitter has less than 100 followers. So you're talking about a very, very small amount of people talking to a very, very small amount of people as well. And 41% of all people that have registered for a Twitter account have never used it. So if you consider that there are 200 million, roughly, in May, there was 200 million Twitter accounts across the globe. 41% of those are, at the moment, completely meaningless. You can interact with your followers by directly contacting them through the @user message, so using that @Lorna Richardson or whatever, but you can also, one of the big uses of Twitter is using a retweet, which is basically forwarding information or adjusting and then forwarding information to your followers. There's not a consistent convention on how you retweet, and it makes it a bit difficult if you're searching for information, or if you're trying to gauge the accuracy and authority of the information. It can be a bit difficult because messages can get muddled and mixed and changed. And there's lots of motivations for people forwarding information using the retweet. You can be, if you're involved in marketing, for example, or political activism, actively seeking a retweet it widens your audience massively. If you're kind of trying to propagate a topic and keep it going for a long time, you'll seek a retweet. And it's also a way of showing your agreement with something. So I will often retweet something I want other people who follow me to see that I agree with. You're demonstrating that you're paying attention. So if you're receiving interesting tweets, rather than sending them an individual reply going, yes, I agree, which would fill up your timeline, you can just simply retweet it, and it gives you sort of, other people can see you're agreeing. It can also be used for social leverage and to sort of attract or gain and maintain followers, because you're trying to make yourself look good, you're trying to align yourself with a particular way of thinking. But it may also dilute or alter what's actually being said in the content of the tweet. And there can be a lot of misrepresentation and misinformation going on. Another convention within, or sort of semi-convention within Twitter, is the use of hashtags. So anybody wanting to search for information on Twitter has a bit of a hard job without the use of a hashtag, as there are currently about 600 tweets being sent per second. And during President Obama's information about Osama bin Laden, there was 5,008 tweets being sent per second. So you can see that trying to find specific information at that rate would be like trying to look for a needle in a haystack. So the number and rate is really important to trying to seek information, and the restriction of 100 characters mean that keywords that you might necessarily be searching for is a bit difficult to find. And they might be left out or just inferred through other tweets that you probably wouldn't be looking for. To solve this, the Twitter community itself decided to use hashtags. Now this is the example of a hashtag for archaeology and the Day of Archaeology, which I'll talk more about in a minute. By putting that hash symbol in front of a particular keyword that you want to emphasise, anybody else can use that word as a way of searching, and it aggregates the information, means you can have conferences, you can use one hashtag. We're using ACRNCASPA, very long one, for this one. There are a few difficulties with this, and certainly trying to get people to use hashtags is difficult. Not everybody does it in the same way. Not everybody's spelling of the same words is the same. Certainly during the research that I've been doing throughout April and May, people have been using different hashtags. For example, people have been spelling archaeology in the American English spelling, in the British English spelling. Some things have been tagged with pub-arch for public archaeology, or com-arch for community archaeology, and then you have well, what's the difference and what's the point? And a lot of American tweets are tagged with anthropology rather than archaeology, so that's things to bear in mind. You can also find information on lists, so creating a list of people that are involved in specific topics. You can have archaeology, lots and lots of people already have archaeology lists that will have hundreds of people on them already, and you can search for those lists, find those lists, and then follow those people, or just follow the list, so you don't have to follow thousands of people. So who uses it? Twitter use is developing at an enormous speed. Twitter recently announced that the numbers of people using Twitter has reached 200 million, 70% of which is people registered outside the USA. So 460,000 Twitter accounts are created every day. So it's a widespread method of communication. As you can see, London is the hotspot in Europe for Twitter use. It's being used for political debate, political campaigning, entertainment, sports marketing, anything you can think of. And Lady Gaga currently has the most followers, bless her, with 9 million. Very good, hard work. But with all these millions of accounts to follow, Twitter is a source of trivial and banal information, and personally I don't follow Lady Gaga or Stephen Fry, but if so many people are using the platform in the UK, what are they using it for, and what's happening in the archaeological world? How is archaeology taking advantage of these 200 million potential customers, as it may be? Is Twitter being adopted as quickly in different organisations as fanboy newspapers like The Guardian would like you to think? Does it support public engagement? Does it support networking within archaeology? And is it worth using, or is it just another technological fad that will die the death of MySpace in a couple of years? I am an active and addicted Twitter user, and I really felt that this is where I wanted to start my research in social media, because it's something that I'm very, very interested in. I undertook a survey in April on Twitter, and I approached Twitter using 27 questions that were written in a piece of UCL software. And I created a 27-question survey, uploaded it, sent the link out on Twitter. I followed as many people that had the term archaeology in their profile information as I possibly could, which is around 450 people at the moment who are on Twitter that I can find all over the world that are archaeologists, allegedly. So I requested that they fill in the form, ask people to retweet this information and forward it to anybody that they knew. I spent quite a lot of time on Twitter, actually working, not wasting time. So I was having conversations with people and trying to build up interest in the survey and what I was trying to do and what would happen at the end of it. And I used the hashtags archaeology and pub art sort of interchangeably and tried to get as much attention to the survey as possible. It was open for 15 days only, because I felt that if it had gone any longer, people would have lost interest by then. And it was posted on a daily basis, so there was plenty of opportunity across time zones, because that's another important consideration, is to get a good cross-section of people in archaeology from all across the world. You'd have to do it morning, noon and night just to make sure. I had 167 responses, which I think is actually really good. So 167 times 27 is quite a lot of data. So I'm just going to be showing you some of the information that I think is most pertinent to today, which is about social engagement. There's quite a lot of stuff about whether they use TweetDeck or whether they use whatever. That's not relevant at the moment. But my most important question was, why are archaeologists using Twitter? And here is my lovely Wordle. Most respondents said that they use Twitter as a platform to network, to meet new archaeologists, to meet new connections that they can make beyond work, to promote their organisation or their own research. So there's quite a lot of people who are, like myself, PhD researchers on there, who are interested in engaging with other people. And it's a quick and simple way of crowdsourcing information, so you can talk to other people about what you're doing and ask questions and get very, very swift replies. Almost all the respondents said that they had a sense of supportive community amongst archaeologists online, and that the development of friendships was a really important part of what they were doing and why they participated. A lot of them were old hands at the game, so most people, 55% of everybody that replied, had been using Twitter for over a year and up to 4 years. And there were about 40% who were recent adopters and had started to use it in the last 6 months. So you've got a real mixture of people. It's not alone though. I should point out that most people who responded said that, in fact everybody who responded said they were using other forms of social media, so a lot of people were using Facebook or blogs related to their Twitter account as well, so it's not done in isolation. You really couldn't just have a Twitter account on its own and use that as a form of public engagement. There has to be something else to back it up, not least because you're really restricted by 140 characters to be able to have meaningful conversations with people. I'm going to have to rush through this. To cut a long story short, it's really difficult to analyse Twitter data because they've changed access to the application API, and you can't actually access and download and find out who's saying what to where. You have to use a third party to gain any data, which makes it really difficult to find out what's being said. But as you can see, it's usually news or things about Romans. I was very pleased that facial hair appears quite highly on there. It's a key topic of conversation amongst archaeologists. But overall, people who are using Twitter in archaeology are using it every day. They're updating their Twitter accounts on a daily basis, and that's both the personal archaeological links and the professional archaeological links. I should forget that. Going back to what Andy was talking about, influence on Twitter, it's really very interesting results. My survey question itself was quite ambiguous, and I think quite a lot of people were unclear about whether I meant how do they garner influence and authority on Twitter. Do I mean who's the most powerful, who is the most powerful according to policy, or who is actually doing the most tweeting? Almost everybody said that they didn't see Twitter as a platform for political influence, which is very strange given the use of Twitter in other sectors for political activism. And certainly I would see that as something that should be done if we're looking at massive heritage cuts. We should be using Twitter. Those that were active acted as tweet hubs or sources of news, were actively involved in conversations and discussions, regularly updated their accounts, and these people were seen to have the most influence. So it's about being there, talking to people, dialogue, discussion, and not tweeting, going away for a month and then coming back. Unfortunately, geographical location seems to be quite significant as well, and people that were working on archaeological projects outside of the UK or the USA also said they felt quite marginalised, and that there was a real sense that archaeology, not in these areas, wasn't retweeted often enough. People weren't being followed in these accounts, and there was a complaint that the UK and USA users of Twitter in archaeology were quite cliquey. Gauging accuracy of information, briefly, it's about following the source information, so following the links, checking details, being critical with everything you find, and finding out who's behind your Twitter account. Your reputation, your profile, what you've said on Twitter in the past, all seem to play a very big part in actually being respected on Twitter. Lots and lots of reports of people Google stalking Twitter users. So if you are thinking about setting up accounts, bear that in mind. I'll skip over the information about the Day of Archaeology because I think Dan's going to talk about it and I haven't got much time left. Respondents to the survey talked a lot about feeling part of an archaeological community. Now, the word wasn't exactly community, but more of a network, and this is sort of an interesting development. People agreed that they were part of a network depending on their active participation and how many professional archaeologists they were followed or followed by. So it's actually not whether you're an interested amateur archaeologist, it's whether or not you're a professional archaeologist that you're deemed to have authority and to be part of a network. Most people were interested in sharing things like digital archaeology, GIS, or Egyptology, and also that they felt more of a community when it was they were able to make new contacts in university departments and meet new colleagues overseas. A lot of people said that they weren't, because they were new to the platform, because they were a new user, they weren't familiar with Twitter etiquette, for example, they weren't confident and they didn't have the ability to be really active on Twitter because they didn't have the time or they didn't have the technology to access a computer at all the time. They felt on the very periphery of the network. So a lot of people claim that they were observers and consumers of Twitter, which seems to me fair enough. If you want to use it as a news source, that's fine. Most people said that they would find the loss of Twitter really annoying, but it would be quickly replaced by another service. So Twitter, is it really that important? I mean, it's a unique platform for networking, certainly. The updates by mobile phone, the updates on the move, is a unique way of keeping up with people. It's a unique way of accessing real-time news. And the constant stream of information and the informality was the most important things to people. But Facebook, academia, LinkedIn and so on would probably take its place if it didn't go the way it prepared. I'm going to be very quick. So what kind of information do people who are already using Twitter want to see shared? And this is quite interesting. The big one, obviously, is news, events, publications, more information about fieldwork projects, research projects want to share, archaeological activities that are hidden from public view, interpretations, research in progress, conferences, and so on. Most respondents were keen to see actual organisations use the Twitter accounts that they have more and to have more dialogue. A lot of organisations, I will name no names, talk to people, broadcast to people, but they don't listen. So actually engaging in a two-way conversation is something that people want to see who are already using it. The ability to have access to university staff and to specialists that you wouldn't normally have any other channel of communication for is also really important and very valued amongst the respondents on Twitter. And this kind of thing really reinforces the idea that Twitter is it's only one part of the social media toolkit for anybody that's using this kind of thing in archaeology. It can't just be a standalone platform. Very briefly, there are lots of reasons why not to use Twitter. You can feel that you might lose control of your information. It could be technically dangerous. You might get spammed or phished or whatever. There may be people impersonating you, or the technology itself may be obsolete in a few years' time. My plea is that your organisation or yourself should use Twitter if you possibly can. It's a way of being invited into people's lives without you having to pay anything for that to happen. You can then talk to people, you can have meaningful conversations, you can connect with the media, other forms of media, very, very quickly, and you can stay connected to news and events across the globe with very, very little time and effort expended. If you can be bothered to talk to people that follow you and engage in conversations, you can generate quite a lot of traffic to your websites. You can follow conferences with hashtags. There you go. I don't know. Join Twitter. End of story.
Are there any questions for Lorna? Ben?
There's only one, but it's quite short.
Can I sit down?
It's just the video.
Oh.
Don't worry about it, it's fine. It's quite straightforward. With the web project for the metrics that the museums went for, they've looked at cloud peer index for how you get authority. Are you going to look at that at some point, or do you think it's relevant? In some ways, it's quite a flawed measure of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it has to be more qualitative assessment of that than sheer numbers, because that's meaningless. It's actually how people are using that information, what impact it has on them, and yeah, I don't.
Do you want to elaborate a bit more on how much it's costing to get access to data from Twitter now? Because that's quite a big factor for academics.
To get a full hose of information from Twitter, which would mean that I would be able to have access to every single person that I wanted's tweets, would cost me £2,000 a month. Which I cannot afford, unfortunately. So that refused quite a lot. It only happened recently, and it's meant that research on Twitter has been made very, very difficult. Very difficult.
We are getting around it slightly, though.
Slightly, but the tools that are there are very, very flawed.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I showed you is only a very small snapshot, because you can only get a small percentage of the amount of tweets that are coming through on any particular subject.
Yes.
Excuse me, sorry, slightly difficult to hear at the back. Could you just say what it was that would cost you £2,000 a month? I didn't quite pick that up.
It would mean that I would be able to have access to all tweets about a particular topic. So I would have to go to an organisation called NEEP and pay them £2,000 because they are Twitter's preferred contractor for the data processing.
Sorry, when you say access, you mean that you would have them on your machine?
I could access the data, so I could do textual analysis and so on with the stuff, but at the moment you can't have that at all. You used to be until a few months ago, but now they've stopped it because they've monetised access to Twitter.
Can you not set up RSS feeds for a particular hashtag?
You
I've
can.
been doing it for Hadrian Wall for the last 3 years. I've got like billions of tweets now.
But if I'm trying to, because what the type of research that I'm trying to do, which would involve some kind of textual analysis, it would take too long. I want it to do a month snapshot.
But can't you set it up for a month? Just an RSS feed which you just take in every single thing, and then you'll have a month.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, I'll talk to you about it later. You tell me how to do it.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks. So now Tom Gosker is going to do a review of the activity of Wessex archaeology on the web, so what has worked and what has not worked throughout the years.
this is sort of, I work for Wessex Archaeology, and this is sort of my experience of running an archaeological website, sort of over the years, and kind of a history of sort of how our website came about and sort of where it's gone and where it's going and how it sort of fits into the wider archaeology ecosystem. So just a very, very brief introduction to who Wessex Archaeology are. We were founded 32 years ago. We're a not-for-profit charitable company. We have offices across the UK now in Salisbury, Rochester, Sheffield and Edinburgh. We're currently 190 people. Until recently we were 208, but unfortunately there have been some culls. We undertake many hundreds of projects every year, and we have, I think it's 7 or possibly even 8 now, I should check that beforehand, annual turnover. Any surplus that we make is taken back into the company and spent on education, outreach, publication, dissemination of the archaeological material that we create. So when I came to the company in 2001, these were the kind of activities that they were undertaking and still undertake. School visits, except our education manager was recently made redundant, unfortunately, so that's now stopping. Local society lectures, they still happen. National lectures, university lectures, I'm here now. We contribute to county journals. We deposit our client reports for every project into the S&R HER. We assist in local events. We help out with open days. We sometimes run our own excavation open days where sort of the site and the client permits. And we assist with the press and the media for getting some of our bigger stories out there into the wide world. So, what happened at Wessex is in 2002 we made a major discovery at Amesbury. It was a burial that came to be known as the Amesbury Archer. I'm afraid I'm guilty for inventing the name. It was a discovery of international significance. Everybody in the world seemed to want to find out about it. It sort of hit the newspapers, it came out onto the BBC, and simply we could not cope with the amount of interest in this particular project. We simply, the phones were just completely blanketed out. The fax machine was running out of paper every hour. You couldn't even read the emails. It was ridiculous. So very, very, very quickly and very rapidly, we had to develop a website to carry the information that would sort of satisfy the thirst for information about this project. So I was very quickly had to sort of put my hand up so I can do websites and just hand-coded in HTML a basic website which included some photographs, the basic introductions to what we found, pictures of the finds, that kind of thing. We put it onto what was then our free web space from BT. We got hundreds of thousands of global visitors sort of almost instantly because our website address was put on the BBC website, CNN, you name it. This is what the first website looked like back in May 2002. And very, very quickly BT said, that free web space you have, you're getting far too many visits for it, goodbye, and pulled the plug on it. But that's understandable, there was a fair use sort of limitation on there. So we had to learn very, very quickly on our feet how to sort of set the website up and get it running. So now we're properly hosted and can grow. So in the space of a few months, the Amesbury Archer launched our website profile and really launched Wessex into having a global profile that we weren't until then used to. But thankfully, some forward-thinking people at Wessex sort of realised that this was an opportunity to sort of grab and use and expand upon, to take the knowledge of what we found out to the world, and there was sort of a seed idea there that we would grow our website and grow our audience and really make the most of the web for getting that information out there. So it sort of charged with me to, since I'd made the website, to keep on top of web publishing trends. I had to keep on updating the website, and I've had to keep on exploring new ways of publishing our content, which is, a really quite nice sort of job to have in that respect. So we carried on putting stuff online, adding small bits onto our website, and I kept reading things, and I came across this term called Web 2.0, which was being used by Tim O'Reilly from the O'Reilly Technical Books for a conference in 2004. It's a term that really doesn't have a set meaning, it's an umbrella term. I've taught students at Southampton University about Web 2.0 over the years, and really sort of, in essence, it marks a turning point in how the web works, how it's a philosophical term really. It sort of encompasses instant publishing, web applications, so rather than just using a program on your computer, you can use a program through your web browser. Social networking, new interfaces, sort of having things look nicer on screen and behave more naturally. And we sort of saw pretty early on how archaeology could benefit from this approach. So one of the very first things that I do and came across was blogging. I came across blogging in 2004 and thought, well, this is great, this is an idea of being able to very, very quickly put information out there into the public, news, announcements, special events, other kinds of media, and to sort of solicit, sort of hopefully, a conversation. People could ask questions from us, and we would be able to answer those questions. And also, blogging provides us something called an RSS feed, so we could get our news put over onto other people's websites too. So it's all about trying to get as many people knowing about your information as you can. And Wessex now have 14 blogs, but as I'll go on to in a bit, and anyone who's seen the Wessex website have noticed that they aren't updated very frequently. But those are problems I'll get onto in a minute. So, going on from blogging, some of the ideas that we had were in 2005, this thing sort of came up in the news of something called podcasting. Apple introduced podcasting capabilities into their popular iTunes software that people were going crazy for when it first came out. And so of course we called it Archaeocast. And basically it's a radio program that is delivered via the internet. You can subscribe to it and you can automatically get the latest podcast arriving on your computer and sync it with your iPhone, well then you went around then your iPod, hence the name. And we managed to get Archaeocast listed on iTunes. We've only got 16 podcasts, which, looking at 2005, that's not very many per year. But we wondered how popular that would be. You know, would anybody ever download these things? The way I sold it to people at Wessex was, well, you know, if I spend, you know, an evening preparing a podcast and then actually go and record it the next day, maybe an hour, 2 hours. It's the same sort of prep that you would do for lecturing to a local society. And it's okay, that's fine. So, you know, if we go and do a good lecture, we may get 200 or 300 people. Do you think you can get 200 or 300 downloads? I think so. So I went and, you know, I volunteered to record the first few, and it caught off pretty quickly actually, and we were soon listed in the top 10 in the humanities sort of area of history area of the iTunes podcast directory, and you know, 200,000 downloads to date. I mean, people still download that first episode that I was recording on shonky equipment, sort of with a slightly wavery voice out in the field. They still seem to find it interesting. We still get comments, so you know, it's great. Unfortunately, it has been very hard to keep the podcast going. It's hard to find sort of volunteers. I've tried to volunteer people, but they seem to run away very quickly when that happens. And some people, they really don't like being sort of interviewed and being spoken to. So sometimes I've gone to record a podcast and people say, oh, I don't really want to volunteer, you know, which makes it sort of quite difficult. So, you know, sometimes there's too much of my own voice. And sometimes, you know, there have been some lovely sites that I wanted to record, and they would have made a very good podcast because there was a nice story to the archaeology. But unfortunately, working in the world of commercial archaeology, we have to take into account client confidentiality, which can, you know, is a very real thing we have to take into account, which can also then sort of ruin the timing and sometimes the context. I've thought about going to a site where we've said, you know, can't really do it because of X, Y, Z reason. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I could try and sort of take the context out of it and make it sort of, but then it then ruins that story. So it is quite tricky. So over the years, trying to identify sites and trying to get people to volunteer has been actually quite hard. But you know, it's there. We know how to do it. We've got a delivery mechanism, so hopefully we'll get some more recorded as time goes on. Flickr was another experiment. 2005, which is the year of Web 2.0 really. We began uploading photographs to Flickr. When Flickr came around, Flickr is a website for sharing photographs. It's one of the original social networks, one of the original sort of examples of Web 2.0. Basically, a very, very good way of sharing photographs. So we've been able to get, I think it's about nearly 2,000 photographs up there now. We've constantly put them out, so just a few at a time, keep them trickling up there. We have very good metadata, the titles, tags and descriptions. And we also now add location. Sometimes it's sort of a fuzzy location if it can't be, you know, if there's certain sensitive locations involved. We also allow anyone to download the high-res copies for personal educational use. We've adopted a Creative Commons license, which is nice, quite progressive in archaeology, which we've adopted quite early on. So basically, rather than people who have to approach us to use any image, they can just use the image because they can see the CC license next to the image. And if they want to use it on their blog, or they want to use it in their essay, or on their website, so long as they're not going to make any money directly from it, they can use our images, and that's proved to be really quite interesting. It also means that people can do other creative things with our images. We've had people paint, do watercolours of some of our artefacts. We've had all sorts of strange photoshopped things, collages, and you know, a lot of people seem to be looking at the photographs. So you know, we're going to keep that going. That's a really good success. So here's some examples. There's a website called Worth 1000 where sometimes it's an archaeological sort of competition where you have to do something kind of witty with an image. You know, there have been some interesting examples. To a Tiny Tim, you get your eye in there, and then the other way around. It's fun to see people engaging with photos and these. These weren't things that we kind of envisaged when we first put them out there, but we're quite pleased. You know, it is good to see these things. We've also had other things that are a bit more serious. So using Flickr, it's fairly low maintenance really. I mean, our graphics departments tend to they get the photos ready and they make sure that all there's health and safety compliance in all the images before they go up there. So we upload a few photos a week. Sometimes we upload a big batch of photographs and then we enable them one by one just to keep sort of the momentum and activity going, rather than the account lay dormant for long periods of time. We organise our photos into sets and collections so that if you want to browse it, things are easy to find. Now that Flickr provides stats, you can look at some of the numbers. 15% of the images have comments, 32% of them have been added as somebody's favourite, which is nice. I can see people saying, hey, I like this photo. And because Flickr have what's called an API, we're able to take the Wessex website and Flickr, connect them together, and have the images flow through onto the Wessex website as well. So that's really great for providing instant photo galleries. So I can put a project up on our website and I can say, give me all the photographs from this project that are on Flickr, and they automatically come up on the page. Very, very handy to have. So rattling through, there's another service called Scribd, which is a bit like YouTube for documents. And you can view a PDF in your browser without having to download the actual PDF, launch Adobe Reader, etc. You can group your documents into collections. If you sign in to Scribd, you can download the original PDF. Again, this was an experiment. We just it was free. We thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And I think we've been using it since about 2006, so fairly early on. And as you can see, we've got 17,956 people who subscribe to our documents. So in theory, you can't ever see that as an active user base. People have signed up to be alerted when we update new documents.